Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Occult Think Tank. My name is Greg. In today's program, I am going to talk about how Christianity greatly distorts the Bible to try and fit a dictatorial government mindset, and how you are supposed to bow down to a dictatorial government. It all comes from this that was sent to me by a friend of mine on Facebook. And it says, to fully comprehend God's grace, we must first come to understand we deserve death, as our carnal nature makes us an adversary of all that is holy. We can only begin to comprehend His grace by facing the reality of the judgment against us. There is a lot wrong with this mindset. This idea is Christian through and through. He didn't tell me where this came from, or what I was wanting to know was basically what type of Christian sent this, be it Baptist, Pentecostal, Catholic, because the various sects have different degrees to which they buy into this horse shit. The thing is, there is a lot wrong with what is here, and I'm going to break it down for you and show you with the Bible where this is absolutely wrong. This idea that I first want to focus on is this idea that we deserve death as our we deserve death. I'm going to pause with my breakdown of this at that, because that correlates to Ezekiel 18:20. And like I have said, Christians only quote the first 7 words of Ezekiel 18:20. They want no part of any of the rest of what is in that verse or the following. All they give a damn about is what fits their narrative, what fits their authoritarian boot on your head control. This is what Christians do. They distort the Old Testament in order to try and make it fit their authoritarian do as I say or I'll hurt you mindset. There's a lot of things that the Old Testament God can be given a black eye for. The idea of an authoritarian government is not one of them. But the rest of that verse says, and it's important, the Son shall not bear the iniquity of the Father, neither shall the Father bear the iniquity of the Son. That right there brings in a major oh shit for Christians and their you are born with this stain of sin idea. Because when I was interviewing Mark Powers, I had asked him about the Jews' view regarding the original sin and the idea of people being inherently sinful because of Adam and Eve. And he had pointed out something I thought was quite interesting. From the Jewish perspective, a child is born innocent. They are not born with any condemnation from sin because, as Mark Powers put it, they haven't done anything. A child being born is not guilty of any sin. You're most certainly not guilty of it just because you are born. That is a tyrannical mindset. But that is exactly what Christians base everything on. But it then goes on to say, the righteousness of the righteous shall be upon him, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon him. Basically, you will reap the rewards of the good or the bad that you do. It goes along the lines very much of what Jesus talked about of you reap what you sow. This is important because Christianity is all about trying to sidestep the personal responsibility of you reap what you sow. Because to Christian doctrine and their ideas, they can be as cruel and sadistic as they want. And all they have to do is say, Jesus, forgive me, and that washes it all away. They don't want to see and refuse to acknowledge how utterly immoral and morally bankrupt that idea is. The idea gets even worse when you have in this idea of Jesus existing thousands of years before us, and that everything we do in our life can be washed away because of what he did. That would be akin to somebody trying to pay for the crime of another. In our society, it would be like you going to a store and saying, somebody is going to steal from you next week, here's $1,000 to pay for it. As if you can atone for or pay for the actions of somebody else. The company would look at you and go, the person hasn't done it yet, so what are you here trying to pay for? It would be looked at as utterly insane. And they could even go so far as to say, keep your money, we will be heightening security to catch the person when they try to do it. Because in our society, by our laws, you do not have somebody else paying for or atoning for what you do. We would send that person away and be, it's a nice gesture, but no, we're going to watch and catch the person that is actually guilty, because they're the ones that have to pay for what they're doing. Because to do it the other way, you're teaching that thief nothing. It teaches nothing to be, I'm going to pay for it ahead of time for them. All that does is reinforce it doesn't matter how you treat others so long as you claim to think something. That is on its very face tyrannical and unjust. That's not about grace either. That is about mind control. Think the right thing and you can get away with murder. Literal murder. Because the idea of not killing, the idea of Jesus dying on the cross, well, that pays for everything. So there's nothing that a Christian has to be responsible for according to their doctrine. This is why their doctrine is socially destructive, morally, and on a personal note, destructive. It not only doesn't teach anything, it encourages people to continue doing the bad shit they were doing because they had no consequences. But the next verse in Ezekiel 18:20 further rips the legs off of this idea of somebody else paying for what you do. But if the wicked will turn from the sins that he has committed, keep my statutes, do what is lawful and right, he shall surely live, he shall not die. Which completely negates the soul that sinneth, it shall die. In verse 21 of Ezekiel 18, it is being explained, in a sense, how you can get around this idea of the soul that sinneth, it shall die. This is not spiritual, by the way. And I also want to point out what is termed the soul is not talking about some spiritual thing. It is the Hebrew word nephesh, and it is properly a breathing creature that is animal. That is, and if I hit the right, there. Okay, but a breathing creature that is animal. That means I am a soul, my cats are a soul, every living creature that is breathing. Your dog, my cats, horses, so forth, is a soul. There is nothing woo-woo or spiritual about this. Nothing. Nowhere in this definition will you see any reference to a woo-woo spiritual, any type of spirit or that. And the word spirit, just to establish this, I have to find okay, let me pull up, because I wasn't planning on bringing this in quite yet, but I want to show you this because it is very important. Okay, I was missing it in Genesis 2, but it is Genesis, damn it. There it is. I just wasn't seeing it before, that the word spirit is in Genesis 2, and that is wind, by resemblance, breath. You could even, I'll even highlight, that is sensible or even violent exhalation, breathing. What is not in this is any type of otherworldly or woo-woo existence, anything after death. Both spirit and soul connect to the idea of a living person. That spirit is the breath, or you could even say the energy, the vitality of somebody. And when I say energy, I'm not talking some kind of mystical energy force thing. When I say energy, I mean the energy that somebody like myself puts into a video like this, or even the way I talk. You can look at how I'm talking. In some regard it is angry, but it's passionate. I'm passionate. I'm putting a lot of energy into what I'm saying. It does not mean I'm putting any woo-woo, ethereal, otherworldly shit into what I'm saying. I am trying to be very rational and logical in what I am saying, because there is a point. And there is a reason I had cut off after the line of we deserve death, because we don't. I've already shown that's absolute horseshit. And it says, as our carnal nature makes us an adversary of all that is holy. That word adversary has a few meanings. I know one of them is Satan. But that is where, and I have the KJV Plus up because I want to show you all. First, we have this one. And I'm going to need to be jumping, in a sense, back and forth so you can see what I'm doing. But that first word of adversary, as you can see, it doesn't mean, that's not the word Satan. But it does appear, it does not specifically say that this is the male version. But the reason I say that is you will notice the H and the 4 letters or numbers after it are different between the one in Exodus 23:22 and 1 Samuel 1:6. The reason for that is, here is the one from 1 Samuel 1:6. It is, I think, okay, that looks to be, okay, there it is. And this one, it helps if I am on the right. Okay. This one clearly says feminine. Whereas the other one, and I'll switch back to it because you know from seeing it before, it does not say masculine. It says a primary root. So it could be, I'm not saying this is the case, but it almost seems as though the adversary in Exodus 23:22 is a male version, whereas the one in 1 Samuel 1:6 is, it says her adversary. So I don't know if that is, and it's a different Hebrew word. But what I was, there is this one that is in Numbers 22:22. That is Satan. And what you will notice in all of these say adversary. Every single one. It does appear that there are 3 different Hebrew words that bring up this aspect of adversary. It would all depend on where you're talking about, be it a male adversary, a female adversary, or Satan. However, the idea of our carnal nature makes us either a male adversary, female adversary, or a Satan to all that is holy. Nothing about what Christianity is promoting is holy. The idea of paying for the actions of another is not holy. It is encouraging the negative behavior by not making somebody have to atone or account for what they have done. Christianity is about enabling bad actions. Murder, rape, so forth. It's all excusable. So Christians are enabling the rapist, the murderer, the child molester, by virtue of the doctrine they support. And that the idea of we can only begin to comprehend His grace by facing the reality of the judgment against us. There is no judgment against us from the God of the Bible. The judgment type of thing against us is a doctrinal message from Christianity. So really, the one that is against us, that wants us to die, is Christianity. If you want to say and carry that over to your Jesus figure, I understand this is a bitter, bitter pill for Christians to try and swallow. But I do feel it is better to face an uncomfortable truth than a comfortable lie. Because Christianity also has this core idea of that they needed a new covenant. The thing is, the phrase, let me go to covenant, and let's even make it Old Testament, because I want to see how many times the phrase covenant, it appears 272 times in 254 verses. And what you will see is there is many references to the God saying, I will establish my covenant. Christians try to say that there needed to be a second covenant. There's a problem with that. That being, let me see if I can bring up okay, all right, well, the idea of an everlasting covenant is in Genesis 9:16, and just to make it easier to read this nonsense, let's shift back. And basically this is with the aspect of the flood type of thing, and that a rainbow is an everlasting covenant between God and so forth, that it wouldn't flood the earth again, which is absolute horseshit. There have been many floods since. The rainbow is simply the way light shines on particles in the air after a rainstorm. It has nothing to do with that, but the covenant that was made was an everlasting covenant. There was no need for Jesus, because the covenant that was made, because even if you go to the one that doesn't specifically, let's jump to the first occurrence of covenant. And it says, but with thee I will establish my covenant, and thou shalt come unto the ark, and thou and thy sons and thy wife and thy sons' wives and so forth, This is the beginning of the covenant that is the everlasting covenant of Genesis 9:16. So if Christians want to try and act as if it was somehow temporary, then it only applied to Noah. And there needed to be a second one after Noah. There wasn't. Jews don't look at it that way. Christians only try to make up that there has to be a second covenant when it fits their agenda. It is not about, does the text, this shit, say that there needs to be? Because it doesn't. There is no mention and no need for a second covenant. Because there's many times in this shit the Jews disobeyed, or the Israelites disobeyed the God and were, to use the term, chastised by the God figure. It didn't mean that there needed to be a new covenant established just because they fucked up and needed to be corrected. Also, there was no need for anything per se to die, because I have shown before where basically if somebody wouldn't have an animal to sacrifice, that it could be flour, that of fine flour. And let me just see if I can pull this up quick. It is, I know it's Leviticus. That if somebody but if he be poor and cannot get so much, then he shall take one lamb for a trespass offering to be waived, to make an atonement, and 1/10 deal of fine flour mingled with oil. But there's also where it says about basically if somebody is poor and can't get an animal or whatnot, that it could do the flour itself, because it's not the thing that you're offering, but it is you're being sorry for what you have done. It is not that the animal or whatnot would just be a symbol. In many ways, I've heard Jews explain this as it would be like a husband that is out late with the guys, and as a way to try and apologize for coming home late, having flowers with him or some kind of gift for his wife. Not that the gift itself would do anything more than to help soften the blow, to be a symbol of, I'm sorry I did X, here is a gift to try and make up for it, but I'm not going to do X again. There would have to be an agreement along with the gift. The gift does not and cannot pay for what you have done. This comes down to social interaction, how people interact with one another. This is why I have a lot of problems with ideas of Christianity, because this idea of grace, the idea of grace goes against the idea of judgment. Because a court will not, to use the term, go by grace. A court is only about justice. It is, if you commit X, there is a punishment for it. This idea of grace is a suspension of judgment. And going by Christian doctrine, if you are deserving of death as a judgment against you, the idea of grace would be a suspension of that. This is, to use the term, it's legal terminology. And this is why Christians love trying to use word games to dance around the issue regarding the God figure. And they try to shift and maneuver an issue so as to, and use word salad to try and confuse the point so that they can make it seem as if they have a loophole. Because what they really want is to sidestep personal responsibility. This whole notion of grace and people deserving of death, it's barbaric. These are ideas that should be discarded. But where this ties in with our world is Jesus in the New Testament. One could argue, and I could make a very strong case, that Jesus was a socialist. That Jesus was about pushing a socialist agenda. A living as a socialistic community. You could make a much stronger case for Jesus the socialist than the idea of Jesus as someone that was free and independent, or even, to use the term, democratic. Those things didn't exist. Those concepts didn't exist. That is why I have a big problem with this idea of rights given by a God. Because according to this shit, you were not given any rights. Especially women. Women had no rights. The only rights you had, to use another analogy, is right this way. Because this shit promotes and even endorses slavery, the subjugation of women, genocide, and if you buy into the Christian bullshit, blackmail, extortion, manipulation, intimidation. That is all in this shit, and even the blackmail, extortion, and so forth, that connects to Jesus. If you want to, and for those that have downloaded the eSword, one thing that I have noticed is John, number 3 over here is a quick link to John 3:16. Actually, it looks like all of them are. Yeah. Every single one of these is a hot link to John 3:16. But Christians love that verse. But they ignore the fact that Whosoever believeth is making it about thought crime. They don't see that because it doesn't fit their narrative. So it's not, it's breezed right past. Christian preachers will breeze right past whosoever believeth, as if it doesn't mean anything. But it is of vital importance, because what you believe is what you think. That makes this 100% about thought crime. Thought crime is tyrannical. There are no two ways about this. If you buy into this idea of John 3:16, you're buying into thought crime, which can be, if you look at it in the aspect of the cancel culture that we have in our world right now, that is so prevalent. At the heart of the cancel culture is thought crime. If you do not think as the cancel culture wants, they want to cancel you. If you dare to speak against their narrative, they want to silence you. I've had Christians act like, why do I use their Bible and so forth as a weapon against them? It is almost as if they don't read it, so they don't want me even referencing it. It is all about control. I am here to point out the truth, even though they don't want to read this shit, because they don't believe it. At the end of the day, Christians no more believe this bullshit than I do. The only difference is they will pretend that they do, whereas I won't. Feel free to leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section. Talk to you later, people.